Hello and welcome once again to Baked Beans Garage, where oh baby she's crusty 2, Electric Boogaloo. Now, last episode I did fix quite a bit of rust, and past me said in this episode I'll just speed run the rest of the holes. But I've done some more digging, and past me is an idiot, so don't listen to that guy. It's not going to be any speed run. But since the YouTube algorithm and viewers everywhere love nothing more than repetition, I'm going to fix it. This could be a whole episode, so let's get into it. So, of course, last time on this here drinker side, I peeled up the insulation on the floor, but I hadn't taken up the sound deadening. Obviously, it's been removed now. Now you can either use dry ice and chisel it off, but I was able to soften it up with some warmth. So, it didn't look so bad last episode, but now you can see it was indeed deceiving, and we have more holes than that Shia LaBeouf movie. What's that called? Transformers. This is the worst of it, as it was on the other side, and I do fear I'll be taking out that seat mount as well as this little cross brace here to fix this. But let us review why it is important to pull all that sound deadening up. This was all one color before, but you can see under the sound deadening that Caterpillar action has been at work for the past 30-something years. And you could tell where it's come from by how it is. Like this one clearly came from the bottom because the rust hasn't spread out as much up top here. This one also bottom. This one clearly began at one of these pinch welds here at a void. Clearly old weather stripping doesn't help with that. But anyway, yeah, you could see all this is probably just from this water spot here. As soon as something touched bare metal, it just creeped out. At least it makes it easy to get the sound deadening up because it's no longer stuck to the floor, it is stuck to crust. But I did notice these are just pop rivets straight through the floor. I don't know if that's factory. If it is, shame on you, Volvo, because look at this. Bare, clean metal. The paint just flaked right off, so that is poor paint adhesion straight from the factory. So she was bound to rust. Now it's my problem. Gee, thanks. On the downward side, I will demonstrate why that spray-on road tar undercoating is a scam at best and a sick joke at worst. Because right here, I found a good spot. There's plenty of these spots, but under that factory undercoating is just crust. And this likely was not formed through water coming up from the bottom, but coming down from the top. And when you spray tar over this, all it does is trap it and makes it worse. And now we probably poked a hole, just like we did here. There's another transformer there. Anyway, just like last time, we'll just start cutting. I think I might actually use a Sharpie and line out my cuts this time. Back here in the cockpit, we can go over a little more rust theory to understand exactly what ails this here Volvo. Now, of course, without an electrolyte, there can be no corrosion because there's no electrons moving about. And in this case, of course, in most cases, our electrolyte is moisture. And moisture's never just going to sit randomly on a single panel and create a hole. It's always going to start at an interface where water can sit, like these lap welded joints. And now, spot welds are an unfortunate reality of automotive construction, but it is what it is. So, that's where these have all started. All, as a matter of fact, at a triple interface. This up here is actually 3 panels spot welded together, and then here and here we have these 2 floor panels, and that with the frame rail, and then the rocker over here. So, to begin, I'm going to mark where there's clean metal, because you can't weld to rust. And if you have any pitting where you're welding to, you're going to blow through. I'm going to blow through. I'm still going to do that, even with clean metal. But we'll get there. So, yeah. Liberally mark out some lines to get all that out. And then so we can start with nice, clean, not so shiny metal. In the interest of precision mutilation, I've went and gotten me one of these little scalpel saws. Makes tight corners pretty easy. Also got to grind these spot welds down. That would have been the first step, but yeah. And now all those are chewed out and kind of cleaned up. At least the frame rail's still fairly intact in both spots, but the Swiss cheese does not end here. We still got the man down over in that corner, the Fury in the spare tire well, and then the Lawless, you know, on the rocker panel. But this is the most exciting one, I think, to get to. So, as with the other side, I'll start by taking that out. And just like with the other side, I'm going to clean them with the wire wheel so I can hook my eyeballs into all these spot welds, then cut them out. Again, with the drill bit, I did order a spot weld cutter set to do this, you know, properly for once, but that hasn't arrived yet, and I'm not very patient. Wow, I'm still pretty bad at this, but it's out. You could see I hid some of my shame and fixed my boo-boos off camera. Don't worry about it. I don't know how I missed that back here where the drive shaft obviously came apart and blew a hole right across the tunnel, but that'll be fun to fix. So yeah, this guy's still gonna have to come out. I don't want to have to weld it from the bottom like on the other side. I only got 4 more spot welds that aren't completely rotten. Well, quite the tussle. A guy sprung a little leak, but success. And from here, I can see that this is going to be a hell of a lot bigger of a patch than I was hoping, because it is super thin all the way up into here, hence blowing through, getting these spot welds out. But it is what it is. So yeah, it was something like that. Let's grab the death wheel. Now we got that chewed out. I'm going to move back to the trunk, cut that hole out, try to clean this up, see what I'm going to do there, and then that hole over here. In the trunk, we have some more concourse quality repair work from a previous owner. At least they've bothered to seal it, but I'm still not a fan of pop rivets and road tar. Well, at least they seem to have used a metallic substrate for that work. And we also got this seam right here. Those are all going to be holes. I gotta look at the other side, figure out what we're going to do about that. But anyway, montage time. Not me losing the audio to this clip. I think I left it in the car somewhere. Anyways, you'll just have to imagine my perfect comedic timing and insightful commentary. As you can see, there's some part of the Volvo there that's broke, and I tossed it. That's the panhard bar mount, and there's a hole right under it. That's probably not too good for rigidity. You're walking up this way. What an idiot. But yeah, I think at this point I was like, hey, I want to fix these holes too, because, you know, I don't have enough to do, so I'll take the fenders off. A few observations before I start throwing sparks all around. First thing that I noticed up here in the cowl, this bracing, what else do you see that in 1986? I mean, I know the Swiss are supposed to be neutral, but they know how to build a tank. More percussive clearancing from a previous owner down here on the rocker, what for fitting those 31s. Wheel spacers, which are not hub-centric. That's just dangerous. You're just relying on the studs there. There's nothing to register the hub of the wheel. That's no good. That will have to change. Down here, a little worse than I originally thought, because we got a hole in the front and the aft side. This little guy right here, I'm not sure. That looks like just maybe a alignment aid for assembly. I don't know. It don't matter. And with that, all of the holes are decrusted, yet still present. The next step will be cleaning up all of the scale and surface rust, the worst of it being on the driver's floor here, with some various wire wheels and then the rust dissolver. Volvo dust. Don't breathe this. Now obviously I'm not exactly a safety Sally whipping my clipboard around with the PPE, but that rust dust will give you black lung in a hurry. And with that cleaned up a little bit, we can see why I like using the big Chungus Arbinger of Doom Twisted Wire Wheel Supreme. If you have any super thin spots, it'll just do you the nice little favor and blow straight through them. So instead of them coming up later as rust holes, they come up now as headaches. Anyways, with that... And while that does its thing on the other side, we'll start templating our many holes. Just some universal material. I thought this looked like a good piece because my channel is also 100% recycled content. There's no fun way to do this. You kind of just hold it and you mush it in, then you be able to trace the lines afterwards. Big holes, I'll put a chunk underneath and then mist it with some spray paint up top. But yeah, I'm not gonna bother showing you how to cut cardboard. And now those are all made up, but the benefactor did specifically request that I don't use cardboard in his rust repair this time, so I'm going to go ahead and make these out of some even more Chevy hood for him. Now, something to be mindful of when you're doing stuff like this. For instance, this was a factory pinch weld, as was on this side. You don't necessarily need to replicate it, because obviously that's where the rust started. You don't want that happening again, and we can get rid of it, so we will. And instead of a pinch weld, we'll just have a nice little fold right there. Same with up here. We'll just leave them pinch welds hanging down and we'll have our new metal right there. So, to the Chevy hood. Alright, and a little rundown of why this takes so damn long. I'll make it out of cardboard, you know, get all my edges nice and close, then take that and make it out of some metal. When I do the cardboard, you'll see I mark out where I need all my flanges for my spot welds and stuff like that. And then I'll just remember when I cut it out of the metal. And then when I go to fit the metal, this is the real tedious part. Just going in and out 8 billion times, poking and prodding a micron off one edge each time you go in and out, and just repeating that until you both lose your mind and you get a nice close seam all the way around. And same thing on the other side, just isn't quite cleaned up yet. I've also done everything in here. Excuse the lights, need to run the grinder. Yeah, just gonna do some cleaning, take some paint and undercoating off. Most of the undercoating I'll just let burn off, it's less work that way. And we'll do a welding montage. For this, I will use some of God's tears. This puts PB Blaster to shame. And it even smells nice. Like almost like a potpourri. It's nice. Oh yeah. Most good. Alright, so this is cleaned up and looking pretty okay-ish. You can also see I used my swing press to give it a little better of a flourish shape so these seat brackets can go back in. This will be the next step. Obviously, some of this is still absent, so I'll have to Zeus some metal back into there, but at least it's not as bad as the other side. Now, if I had a shrinker or a stretcher, I would make this one piece, but since I don't, I'm not a professional, my best bet's just going to be weld 2 in there to make that flange again. Now I could just weld a straight piece straight to the floor and get rid of the spot welds altogether, but I already did the other side like that, so eh. And then the same thing for that guy. Alright, that's almost ready to go back in. Just gotta fix up these ones I drilled through. But first, the seat bracket has to go back in. Made up some little pieces here. I think here I'm just gonna fillet weld these straight to the floor instead of making a flange. I'm getting tired of metal work. Well, that doesn't help. Nor does that. And since it's 1953, of course, everything in the South is closed on Sunday, but I have other stuff to do. I'll get that patch roughed in, at least a piece of metal cut out. Same back here. This one's gonna be fun. She got some shape. A very rare occurrence. I've made an error. I didn't realize I was cutting into that plug. So I'll get it a little warm with the torch and then pry it out, and then when it goes back we'll just use some of that seam sealer. Deep breaths. Now I can finish my weld. And now that that's probably good enough, we can move on with the floor up here. Clean these up a little bit, clean that up a little bit, fixed some of my boo-boos. This, I think I'm just going to cop out. I'm not worried about rust up in this area, so we're just going to do a bunch of rosettes. Make that nice and simple. So yeah, about to hit this with some weld-through primer, and then put these fellas back in. And with that, all the holes are finally gone, so now we're just going to take some time, go around the whole car with a grinder, clean them up, look at them, make sure they're nice and boogery, and then we'll finally paint it, and then address the downward side. Alright, and we're looking pretty good up here. Now I'm going to wait to actually dress this all out and make it pretty, because I want to paint this engine bay, and I'm going to do a little body and filler work in here to make it super pretty. It's not that important because the washer jug sits here and the battery tray is over on this side, so I'm not too worried about that. Similarly, with the hole in the spare tire well, I'm going to wait because I'm probably going to have the axle out, and it's going to be much easier to paint and clean that up here when I do that. So I will demonstrate how I finish this out and seal everything and paint it on this floorboard. Alright, so I got this all wiped down with my favorite gluten-free extra flammable brake clean. That does a great job of getting rid of all the residue from the sound deadening and whatnot. So once again, finished my dinner. We're just gonna slap some paint on her, Okay, well, it's not a very sophisticated process, so this is as good as an angle as you're gonna get. But if you don't already have one, go invest in a low ratio sealant gun or caulking gun. Very much help, especially with like windshield urethanes and thicker sealants. I'm a fan of this one in particular because it takes both 12 gauge and a standard caulking cartridge. Going to start by scuffing the areas I'm going to seal with some Scotch-Brite just to give her a little bit more texture to into. Because remember, any moisture that gets into here will cause both you and your wallet great heartache in the future. So seal it nice and good. I cannot stress that enough. Yeah, this stuff is pretty thick. I have done it before with windshield urethane, but if you try to use the regular Home Depot dad spec caulking gun for this, it will just bend that stamped sheet metal handle right half in two. Nice and pretty enough for the girls whose standards are too high to go out with me. And now that that's on, quick little tech tip. If you dunk your digits down into some lightly diluted dish soap, or even spit kind of works, it lubricates it just enough to glide across and lets you smooth it down real nice and good to make it super pretty. Would recommend. Gives it that professional touch. Anyway, first impressions of this here barrier bond. I like it. It looks, it tastes, it smells just like windshield urethane. Maybe I'll try putting in a windshield with the stuff at some point. Would be a cool little experiment. Now that we're all sealed up, we can move on to our last few elixirs, and you may think that spray-on undercoating may be a good idea to coat the bottom of your car, but no! That stuff is no better than the tar that was sprayed on to begin with, so I like to use bed liner because it gives you much more rock chip protection, and it's still flexible and even has a little bit of a sound deadening quality to it. I saw this at Walmart, so I'm going to give it a try. Like before, I'm going to scuff my surface with some Scotch-Brite for adhesion, and then we're just going to Jackson Pollock it on. Also worth mentioning, this particular oobleck, the bully liner, is actually made in Australia. I'm not sure what it is, but I don't think I've ever been disappointed by the quality of an Australian product. Vegemite remains questionable, but yeah, you can see this stuff is very thick and has quite a lot of grit in it, which makes me hopeful. I'm also of the opinion that when you're working underneath the car, it makes a little more sense to brush things on or stipple or otherwise some kind of mechanical application versus spraying, because you want a decent amount of build what for the rock protection. And with that, the floor's about done. I'll probably come in with another coat or two just for a little extra build-up, and there's a few rust spots I gotta touch up, like right there, and I found that, but I'll do that off camera. I'm about tired of this episode. Didn't get to that spot on the rocker, but we'll get there. Anyway, we got metal once again, so job did real good. Mostly correctly even. So that's going to do it for today. If you've stuck with me through this whole long and boring process, I do appreciate you. If you found it entertaining or informative maybe, it's not educational, please do drop a like or subscribe, appease the algorithm, and support the channel. Next time I think I'll dig into this rebuilt D24T. It's going to be a good time. I'll see you then.